Okay, so with JavaScript, you store data in variables. Variables are names that are given to represent areas in the memory of a computer, a device, tablet, laptop, etc. So variables with numbers are pretty straightforward, and you can do calculations with them. You can add, subtract, multiply, etc. When you want to have information that contains text, such as a name, address, something not meant to be calculated, so a phone number and a date would not be something to be calculated, but generally speaking, things like names, addresses, those kind of labels, they're called strings. A group of characters stringed together, maybe that's where you can consider that they came up with that name. Just understand that you put them in quotes, single quotes or double quotes. Then the object is just a special variable that has multiple parts to it. So I'm actually going to demonstrate the object first, because it's pretty straightforward to see here that the variable last name would just print Johnson. This would print 16. So I'm going to go here and just make a comment just to say here that this line prints what is inside X. Alright, variable X. So right now we have variable X at the top here as the object. So it contains something that says first name colon John, last name colon Doe in these curly brackets. But when I had document.getElement to print it in demo is the paragraph element here that it would be sent to with the inner HTML function, it just gives us this object on the screen. That's because I have to access an actual element in the object. So if I go, for example, dot first name, and you see it gives me John. So it just showing you that X has multiple dimensions to it. Alright, and if I added the other aspect of it, so that's last name, and it's that it starts with the variable name start with a lowercase letter. You call that camel case. So it puts it together without any space. But if I had a space there, as in just empty quotes to create space, then you see it would create space in the name here because you're adding this blank space as a character. Anyhow, the reason I did this is just to simply show you that variable X as an object has multiple dimensions to it. So instead of just X equals something, it's X dot first name, X dot last name. I could put address in the object and it would be X dot address. So you have this entry that can be added here. So I put a comma there, and I could put address, okay, and then I could say Jamaica, whatever. Just want to use an example. Alright, of course we're not going to see that until we access it, so if I want to get something else printed, let me create another object. Alright, so let's create we could do it with different elements just to demonstrate. We could even do it with a H1. Alright, so let's give this an ID of let's call it result. It doesn't really matter, we could call it anything pretty much, and that's going to contain the result of the address. So we're going to just use this to contain the address. So let me just go ahead and just complete that there. It doesn't do anything because there's no text in the middle here. For example, I have to put text in between the tags for it to show up, okay? What we're going to use is to output the element on a separate using the H1 element. So I'm going to copy this line here Alright, this time the ID that we're targeting is result. That's the ID that we're targeting. And we want it to be the address. So we're going to access it by saying x.address. Okay, and see, it prints Jamaica in the H1 size. If I had used a H2, it would have been smaller. So I'm just trying to show you can send the result to any element that would print the information. Okay. If I wanted to say he lives in, and then whatever name is assigned to the country, then I could do something like this. So I could say he lives in. Now, of course, you're not going to see it display because whatever the inner HTML is assigned to, because it goes from top down, okay, how it reads it. So it's going to replace that with Jamaica. So what I'd have to do is I would have to have this saved as some content, and then I'd add it using the plus operator, because strings you can join words together, as I showed you with the John Doe. Okay, so I'd want to assign that to a variable. So let me see here. I can say let me call it result text. Wait, I need to put this above actually, because I want it to be processed before. So result text, I'm going to assign it to being get element by ID, and the ID is result. I just want to basically copy the text into that variable as a string content dot inner HTML Alright, and that's it, because I just want it to be saying he lives in, so it would contain that. Alright, so let me go a little bit further. So this would actually save these words in there, right? That's what it would do, this text here, right? In that. So remember, the equal operator is just really assigning something. It's not saying that that is equivalent to that, like as if 5 is equal to 5 or 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. It's not that. The equal sign in JavaScript programming is about assigning what's on the right hand side and put it in the left. So that's an important thing I need to mention. Alright, so we have done this here. Let me put a semicolon there. I mean, that's the style I'll choose to use here. Alright, so now we can add result text to be printed as the final in this final H1 here. So I'm going to say result text plus. Alright, so let's examine what this has done for us. So I created a variable called result text that would capture the text that is in the H1 element before it gets replaced. And then with the plus operator, you can join the strings. There's a fancy name for that called concatenate with what is saved in x.address. Remember, x.address is an object here. So it has 3 parts to it. It has a first name, last name, address. Alright. Of course, if you wanted to do things like print length and stuff like that, those are stuff that we could also do. So let's say, for example, I wanted to use a bold tag for important text. Let me give it the ID of just call it length value. Alright, so notice that there's no text there. I mean, I could put text there, but I just want the element for something to be presented when we use the inner HTML option. So So we want to see what is in this. Of course, we know what's going to be there, but we just want to test it out. So let's reproduce that here. So of course, we don't want to use demo, we want to use length value. And of course, please be sure to try out these by typing it manually so that it will actually stick. You'll actually remember it a lot better. That's really what we want to have happen. So we want to assign it to what's in length. And see, it gives us 16 because the variable called length has the value 16 stored in it. Alright? And it would be the same thing for Johnson if we did the first name, etc. So again, you can revisit all the different parts of the code. Remember, initially we started out I think I went back too far. Yeah, we started out with just the first paragraph ID demo. Realize that the reason why I didn't print anything here is because we didn't specify what member of the object we wanted to use. Alright, when we selected a specific member, then it printed something there. And of course, that was assigned to the demo paragraph. The ID here that I've printed in the paragraph tag. If I use a different tag, for example, H1, then it would be in a bigger size. So we can output whatever element that we need to. That's pretty much the idea about it. All right, but let's get back to the original P. All right. So yes, let me put back that first name there. Alright, and we said that if you want to join strings together, we can use a plus operator. So let's say I wanted to join the last name to it, and x dot last name. Again, you notice it's using the camel case, so a lowercase letter first and a capital letter in the middle for the second part of the word. So it says John Doe. Of course, it's joined together because there's no space, just a literal variable names together. But we could put space there by just adding a double quote with a single space in between it, and then it gives us a space there. Alright, I could just as easily add other text there as well. So I could say John Alex Doe, to give a middle name. So you can add literal text within a string to explain things. I could put something at the beginning here saying that the full name is and then let me add a plus sign there so it joins it. Alright, so it kind of introduces what we're printing in the variables there. So I could add that directly by adding some text there. Alright, so that's another way that we can use this joining together of strings with a plus operator, also called concatenation. So that's pretty much it for this example with variables. So of course, practicing it makes it perfect. Now, just to remind you that we won't be using the script tag inside of our HTML document, but because we want to see the code alongside the HTML, we're doing it this way for now. You typically would want to have the file referenced or linked. So in other words, what we would do is we would have a separate file that contains the JavaScript. So let me just copy the JavaScript out, or cut it out actually. Alright, but for these tags I'm going to use them to link the text of the JavaScript. That's going to be in another file, so we'll have to use src to indicate that there's another file located somewhere. Alright, I could call it practice.js. I mean, whatever name I'm giving it, it's up to me, but I just need to make sure it ends with .js, okay? Alright, so that's the only thing we'd need to put in, and we'll put it at the end of the HTML. Alright, so make sure it's the last thing just before the body. Of course, we don't have a practice.js file, so we need to create a new file now with our JavaScript in it. Let me turn off the preview for now. So we're going to save it as practice.js. Alright, so there we go. And now let's go ahead and view our result. Alright, so everything is fine there, and of course if we make changes to the JavaScript file, let's see. I added something more. I added a change here. And say the winner is instead of the full name is. Alright, so let's, and so if you see something where there, make sure you're on the HTML file to see the preview. And it says the winner is John Alex Doe. So pretty much the same as before when we had the JavaScript inside the document. I just undo all the typing there. But of course the best practice is to have it in a separate file. Alright, and you would link it by using the script tag. So let me go back and link it with the source name, and this would be in the script tag at the end after all the HTML has gone above it. Okay, so when you're practicing this in a separate file, keeping your JavaScript separate, you're going to make sure that you have the file name saved with .js as you see there, and once this file is created, there's no HTML in this. This is the JavaScript file, but again, make sure you link it with script type is text or JavaScript, and the source is practice.js.